The top 10 worst Latino hoods in the United States. On today's video, we're going to take you to the top 10 most notorious Hispanic hoods or neighborhoods in the United States. We're going to go all across the country and show you the most dangerous Latino hoods in the United States. Did you know the difference between a Latino and a Hispanic? Haitians and Brazilians are Latinos, but Brazilians are actually not Hispanic. Hispanics are people of Spanish descent. Places like Spain are Hispanic, but they're not Latinos. Haiti and Brazil are Latinos, but they're not Hispanic. For today's video, we're going to be looking at Latino hoods. Not all Latino hoods are poor and bad places. In fact, in the state of Florida, places like Kendall and Doral have some of the lowest crime rates and highest incomes in the entire state. So the notion that all Latino or Hispanic neighborhoods are bad is definitely not the case everywhere. States like California and Florida are going to have about 20% of their Latino or immigrant population be illegal, and in places in the Northeast, as little as 10%. But there are other states like Arkansas and Alabama where roughly 30 to 40% of the Latino population will be illegal. So you're generally going to find that those states like California, Florida, and New York are going to have much more affluent Latino communities than a place like Arkansas or Alabama. So in a state like Alabama, where about 34% of the Latino population is illegal, comparing it to a state like Florida, where less than 17% of the Latino population is illegal, don't assume because in your state the Latino communities are in bad shape that in every other state it's the same scenario. Take the beautiful city of San Jose, California, where Hispanics and Asians are both larger population groups by percentage than whites, and by population they have the highest real estate values in the entire United States. And the reason is because it's one of the most beautiful cities in the United States, and it has the lowest crime analytics of any large city in the country. So we can see that there are plenty of minority areas in the United States that are very nice, decent places to live. In fact, if you were to look at some of the nicest places to live in the entire United States by lowest murder rates, you'll find cities like San Antonio, Miami, San Jose, and other places in California are going to rank among the safest places in the country, and they are areas that are vastly Latino population. You hear a lot about bad Latino places in the United States and Latino communities that are horrible, but rarely do they mention the real analytics of the safest cities in the United States all happen to be majority Hispanic, the places with the lowest murder rates. But you guys didn't come here for nice and expensive Latino cities. You guys want to see the garbage, the worst. So let's get right to it. Number 1 is Little Village in Chicago, Illinois. This has got to be the most notorious and dangerous Latino neighborhood in the United States. Many neighborhood organizations are battling it out for turf to see who's going to run one of the hottest strips in Chicago. Chicago is in fact the birthplace of many Latino organizations of the streets, and the neighborhoods in Chicago are known to be deadly. And while there are many Latino hoods in Chicago that stand out, Little Village has got to be among the worst reputations. Being notorious for criminal activity, it's definitely one of the most notorious Latino hoods in the United States. With a large Mexican and Puerto Rican community, you definitely don't want to play games in this part of Chicago. Number 2 is Washington Heights in New York City, known to the locals as Washington High. The largest group here is Dominicans, and Dominicans have a fierce reputation of defending their neighborhoods, known to take it on with machetes. These are serious streets, and while New York City is a very nice and civilized city, and Washington Heights is an important economical area of the city, don't get it twisted. You have to be very alert on the streets of Washington Heights. Historically, this has been a notorious Latino neighborhood. At the surface, it might look like any other part of New York City, but if you look more carefully, some of the most hardened criminals in the city originate here. Washington Heights has always been one of the most notorious Latino neighborhoods in the United States. And if you ask any Dominican about the reputation of Washington Heights, they'll tell you it's a place where you don't want to play around.
Oh, pero ¿qué lo que? ¿Tú nunca caíste de mano tigre?
More recently, areas like Flatbush and Brooklyn have also started to get a notorious reputation, but historically, it's Washington Heights that comes to mind when you talk about the worst Latino hoods in New York City. Other areas of New York City like the Bronx, which have always had a bad reputation, are starting to get cleaned up today and are nothing like what they were in the past. So we have to say, as far as New York City goes, again, Washington Heights is the king of notoriety. The Bronx was predominantly a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Today, it's a little bit different than what it was in the past, and it still holds on to that reputation with people who haven't been in New York City and realize how much this neighborhood has changed and how far it's come from what it used to be. Today, you'll be surprised to know that the Bronx is nothing like what you might have imagined it to be. Number 3 is Compton, California. Compton is now over 75% Latinos. And while the demographics have changed, the problems that plague this city continue. It's no longer African American banging, now it's Latinos that are banging. Same city, same problems, different races. Compton continues to be plagued with crime, violence, and continues to hold one of the highest murder rates on the entire west coast of the United States. You may know about Compton through popular culture like movies and music. Despite the fact it's known predominantly for its African American community, today it's mostly a Hispanic area of Los Angeles, but it continues to be plagued with crime and violence. These people here will literally run up in your crib like CJ from San Andreas. And in fact, if you wanted to get carjacked somewhere in California, just like in the video game, this would be a great place to get started. And I know a lot of people have been hate banging on California, and I haven't been jumping on that bandwagon, but I'll tell you this, there's no beating around the bush here, young man. It's pretty straightforward. Number 4 is Kensington, Philadelphia. And while most people think that the Kensington area is mostly white, if you look at a race map of the city, you'll see that Kensington and even Camden, New Jersey, some of the worst parts of the Philadelphia metropolitan area, are predominantly Hispanic, while most of the things you see on TV about Kensington are mostly the whites there with the problem with the needles and all that, but the actual neighborhoods are predominantly Hispanic, and this has to be one of the worst places ever to raise a family. In fact, I remember the first time I went to Kensington, I told my wife when we talked about how horrible it would be to actually try to raise a family, a decent, nice family in this neighborhood, considering all the crap it's surrounded by. Despite the challenges, a lot of Latinos, predominantly of Puerto Rican descent, have tried to make the best out of a horrible situation. In fact, just putting this area at number 4 is more than generous. While the streets of Philly are not as notorious as some of the other places, when you start to look at the city's overdose death rates, their recent murder rates, they're on track to being as bad as St. Louis and Detroit in a matter of a few years if they keep it going. Number 5 is Oakland, California. The most dangerous city on the West Coast. A lot of the worst neighborhoods here are predominantly Hispanic. It's an expensive city with a lot of crime, a lot of neighborhood organizations, as we're going to call them for today's video. A drive straight through Oakland on International will give you a great tour of some of the nicest Latino neighborhoods in the United States. You're going to find just about every type of hood activity here you can think of. Oakland really is plagued with a lot of problems. And if you're Hispanic, you may not be able to afford the high prices in San Francisco, so a lot of them end up in the more affordable Oakland. And when I say more affordable, it's still ridiculously expensive. But not only are you going to pay a premium for your real estate to live here, but you're going to make sure your family and youth doesn't get involved in the streets, because that's about the only thing there is to do in the city. Number 6 is Little Haiti. Haitians, again, like I said at the start of the video, are Latinos. That makes Little Haiti a Latino neighborhood. It's not a Hispanic neighborhood, but it's definitely a Latino neighborhood. While gentrification, how's that pronounced? Gentrification. No, hold on, Jose. It's gender defecation. No, that's not right. It's been gender defecated. Gentrification is when stupid millennials move into very bad neighborhoods so they can be close to the plug. While it's been gender defecated by rich millennials that are moving in, it is still a really crappy, dangerous neighborhood. Now, the adjacent neighborhood of Alapata in Miami is a Dominican neighborhood in northwest Miami, and arguably this neighborhood these days is having a lot more crime than Little Haiti. It just doesn't have the same notoriety, but if you know Miami, you know that Alapata is a much worse neighborhood. Number 7 is Immokalee, Florida. This suburb of Naples has some of the most incredible poverty of anywhere you're ever gonna see. Over 90% of the population here is Latino or Hispanic. A large percentage of those people are gonna be undocumented. You have Haitians, Mexicans, and Guatemalans, as well as a lot of Central Americans. Overall, it's a fairly poor community with a lot of crime, poverty. The only jobs here are in agriculture. It's a very impoverished area of inland Collier County, which just happens to be one of the safest, most expensive places to live in Florida, but even here, there are poor neighborhoods. Number 8 is Oklahoma City. A large portion of Oklahoma City is predominantly Hispanic, and I'll be honest, these look like some of the roughest Hispanic neighborhoods that I have seen anywhere in the United States. You want to talk about a state with a lot of problems? Imagine what the inner cities of Oklahoma are going to look like. A lot of Latinos have been moving out to Oklahoma, where you can get an apartment for as low as $600 a month. And while that may be affordable, it's really not worth the price. Number 9 is Kansas City, Missouri. The east side of the city is predominantly Hispanic. It's very run down, and geographically, it is a huge portion of the city. Another region of the country that you wouldn't expect to have a huge Latino population, but Kansas City really does have a huge Latino community. There's a lot of poverty here. This region of the country has horrible inner cities as well. And it may not be a part of the country you relate to having a lot of that poverty and crime and rundown areas, but it looks like something out of Detroit or maybe out of the deep south. There's a lot of inner city neighborhoods. Most of those neighborhoods are either Hispanic or black, which means that, yes, surprisingly, Kansas City will make this list. It's a huge community, and it's got a lot of problems. There's a lot of great culture here, great restaurants, great events, great food. There's a lot of pride in their Kansas City Latino communities. But I will tell you, don't get it twisted. I was really surprised to see how big the Latino communities were out here. I really did not expect it. And while you can definitely tell that there's a strong community feel, it's very tight-knit, you can really tell that this is a tight Latino community where everybody gets along and everybody looks out for each other. It's a strong community. But at the same time, there's also a lot of problems. Number 10 is Lawrence, Massachusetts. This is another city that I discovered purely through my travels. And while I only drove through the city one time, the things that I saw were enough to convince me that it's a place I would never want to live. The majority of the population here is Hispanic, and the crime is out of control. The people are nasty, road raging. It just seems like a really crappy place to live. The attitudes of the people probably being the biggest problem. I had heard that this was a really nasty place from some of the locals that have lived here and have recommended that I look at this place and check it out. And when I went there, I was disappointed, just like they told me. One of those places that I go to and I'm just like, wow, it must really suck to live here. In the Northeast, most of these neighborhoods are going to be either Dominican or Puerto Rican. And like I said, the vast majority of the city's landscape is predominantly Hispanic. And while it doesn't look like the poorest neighborhood you're ever going to see, the population density is high, the incomes are low, the crime is high, and the people are just rude and nasty. Analytically, Massachusetts isn't the worst state you could think of. It's actually one of the best states in general in a lot of categories. But when it comes to this particular town, I'm not excited. In fact, I was so disappointed at what I saw in this city that I actually went on a rant in Spanish reprimanding the people of this town and telling them that they need to be better. This place is notorious in that even before I went to the Boston area, people had already told me that when I went to Massachusetts, I had to check out this little town. It's notorious. This town really does embody all the stereotypes of the northeastern person being rude, arrogant, and just nasty. I can definitely see why the rest of the state thinks this place sucks. That is today's video of the top 10 worst Latino hoods in the United States. I hope you guys have liked the video and it's interesting content. Please make sure to hit the like and subscribe, and we'll keep bringing you guys awesome content. Places that could have made this list but didn't. Mexican Town in Detroit, Michigan seemed pretty freaking scary. Historically, Detroit has been the most dangerous city in the United States, and this Latino neighborhood, while not the biggest neighborhood in the city, is definitely one that has a dangerous neighborhood vibe. In fact, some people in the comment section described it as, it looks like it's got a cartel vibe. Not sure why. It was a beautiful evening, but it definitely had me on alert. Not sure why. Detroit's a dangerous city regardless, so you always want to be alert in Detroit. And on the other end of things, if you're looking for another really nice Latino community that's affordable, Dalton, Georgia, north of Atlanta, is today more than 50% Hispanic, mostly Mexican, and it is one of the nicest towns in the South. There's a lot of great Latino communities in the United States, and there's a handful that are definitely a little bit rougher. I think that there's no particular nationality that's worse or better. I just think that there's different states with different laws and different opportunities. And when you give people good opportunities, they thrive. And when you deprive them of good employment, good schools, and good economical outcomes, those communities are going to suffer. And I think some of the worst Latino communities we've seen is simply because they're in regions of the country that don't want to see Latinos thrive. Because when you give Latinos an opportunity, we've seen in the state of Georgia, entire towns from Dalton to Moultrie, a few other places come to mind where Latinos moved in, they gave them an opportunity, and these towns were literally going to rot away if it wasn't for the Latinos coming in and saving these towns. Entire states like West Virginia and Mississippi, cities are falling to crap if they just allow Latinos to move into these states. These little towns that are going to crap can be restored, businesses reopened, houses fixed and remodeled, and children born to start new lives in towns that are dying. Look at Laurel, Mississippi, and Russellwood, Alabama, Decatur, Alabama. When Latinos move into these communities that were dying before, they really changed the atmosphere. But unfortunately in the United States, there's an anti-Hispanic sentiment that has led a lot of these communities to fighting back from an influence that is actually productive for their towns. People that are going to start businesses, people that are going to actually make things better, but they just don't give them the opportunity. I can definitely see states like Mississippi, West Virginia, and Alabama being able to benefit from allowing these communities to move in and make these places better. Some of the examples that we've looked at today are communities that for one reason or another, simply people have had to pretty much gang up and protect themselves from the fact that they're in a hostile place that hasn't given them the opportunity to grow. Or in the case of Miami, a large metropolitan area with rich and poor, and simply volume means that in a city that large, you're always going to have bad areas. Take the chance of New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, some of the best analytical cities. They have neighborhoods where Not everybody's taking full advantage of the privileges of being in the United States. Could it be a product of their environment, or could it simply be that these communities, a lot of the people just aren't trying hard enough? Look at Miami. There's so many Hispanics that are thriving in Miami, and then you look at neighborhoods that are Hispanic and are in poverty, and you can say maybe they didn't prioritize education, combination of factors. Who knows? But never generalize. Checking out. This is Jose. I really hope you liked today's video.